Hi, everybody. My name is Sabina, and I'm going to be telling you about my internship with Fixus Mobilis in Vilnius, Lithuania. So a little bit about myself. I got my bachelor's in architectural engineering from the University of Kansas in 2024, and I'm just starting my second year of my master's in historic preservation at Columbia University in New York. And then I'll tell you about my host organization, Fixus Mobilis. So the Fixus office is located in Vilnius, Lithuania, which is the capital city of Lithuania. Fixus is a government-funded project that was established in 2019 based on the precedent of other projects that exist around Europe for kind of these mobile workshops and mobile heritage care. The Fixus team consists of 3 different teams of architects, craftspeople, and historic specialists. They drive around the country of Lithuania in these mobile workshops that you can see are vans that are basically tricked out with any kind of tools that you could ever want to take on site and work on projects. So it was really interesting to get full range of all of the tools that were in these vans. One thing that's really cool about the work that Fixus does is that their services are completely free of charge to owners, specifically of heritage designated buildings in Lithuania. So the way that it works is owners of these buildings are able to apply for the opportunity to have their building inspected and have preventative maintenance work performed by Fixus, and they qualify for that opportunity just by owning a building that's on the heritage designation list in Lithuania. So the work that Fixus does is not necessarily pure restoration work in that it's preventative maintenance, where they use modern tools and techniques to repair buildings and kind of stabilize them, with the intention that restoration work will later be done on the buildings by a different qualified contractor. So that's kind of an important distinction when thinking about the scope of the work that Fixus does. So to quantify a little bit of the work that I did during my internship, so I spent about 50% of my days in the office and 50% on site. And of my days on site, I got to travel all around Lithuania doing some inspections, some maintenance work, and also some workshops. So I'll go into each of those different types of days in the rest of my presentation. So during my time in the office, I did a couple different tasks, specifically creating measured drawings that we would take out into the field and print out and bring on our clipboards to mark off where we were taking samples or where we saw specific conditions. So I was able to get familiar with the buildings that I'd be working on in that way when I first started at the office. I also helped out later in the summer with writing reports. So Fixus issues a written report of the conditions documentation and the work that they performed for every building that they work on in a year. So I was able to help out writing the reports on some of the buildings that I was able to visit. And one interesting thing that I also was able to do was I studied this doctoral thesis called The Impact of Microclimate on Biodeterioration of Wood in Historic Buildings. And I was able to study the techniques that they used in this thesis to study buildings and suggest to Fixus some of the ways that these techniques might be able to be implemented in their work. So on site, here's a map of the country of Lithuania, and I've marked each of the objects that I was able to visit with Fixus. So in the end, I was able to travel to 18 objects across Lithuania, and in a 10-week internship, that meant that I was traveling at least once, if not twice a week, sometimes staying multiple nights in neighboring towns of these objects. So this was really a dynamic and exciting experience for me. I saw a variety of different building types, particularly a lot of wooden vernacular buildings, which was very interesting to me as somebody that I've been living in New York for the past year. And so these 18th and 19th century wooden buildings were completely different than what I've studied so far in my career in heritage. So it was really exciting for me to see. I also got to work on some churches and other monuments of that type. So you'll see in some of my photos, but I think it's interesting to look at this map and see just how much of the country I was able to cover in 10 weeks. So it was really exciting. So to start with, the first kind of visits that Fixus will do, they visit every site twice. The first visit is an inspection. So they will go out and do photographic documentation, of the object. As I mentioned with those drawings, we will also mark where we take samples. So Fixus works with a laboratory back in Vilnius where they'll collect certain kinds of samples and send them in for analysis. So I got to learn how to take different types of samples. We also would measure the microclimate conditions, so the temperature and relative humidity in different rooms of the building to determine how the conditions were for growth of mold or fungus. And we would also take some time to brainstorm with the team on what work we might be able to do when we came back. So looking at, what needs to be done and also what's within the scope of the work that Fixus can provide within the time constraints and the type of tools that they have. So this is a little bit more about collecting samples. This was something that I'd never done before. In my background as an engineer, it's maybe a little bit more technical or kind of in the chemistry world. So it was exciting for me to learn how to do this. As I said, we took some samples of biological growth, such as mold and fungus, to be able to send it to the lab and analyze to tell building owners whether something is harmful or kind of how they can prevent mold or fungus from spreading. We also took some mortar samples to analyze the salts and the composition of mortar, as well as paint samples from various areas on these buildings, basically for the purpose that the report that Fixus issues would be given to future restoration contractors to be able to perform restoration work. And so kind of all of this documentation is a tool that they can draw on to perform that work later. So then coming back for the second visit to these buildings, we would perform maintenance work. So this was also something completely new to me, with a lot of new tools and techniques. And it was different every time, which was really exciting. It would depend on the building's condition and what kind of work needed to be done. Sometimes there were things that required climbing on the roof with ropes, and I didn't have that training. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that, but it was really exciting to watch the craftsmen do that kind of work and see what techniques they use. But there was plenty of work that I was able to do from the ground. So it included cutting and bending metal, often to patch roofs or gutters, to focus on proper water drainage from these buildings, trimming overgrown landscaping as well to protect the building. You can see in the image on the bottom right, there was a grapevine that went all the way across the balcony of this building and was rotting the wood. So we were able to trim that back. So it was great to see visible results when you show up in the morning to start the work and then leave at the end of the day, and you can see a big difference. Often I would help out with cleaning different materials, so I got to learn about the proper methods to do that as well. And then sometimes our craftsmen would replace rotten wooden members with new wood, so I would help out with applying sealants, specifically paint, sometimes tar, to these new wooden elements to preserve them for the future. One unique thing that I got to do and something I enjoyed the most was to collaborate with my coworkers, using my engineering knowledge to give them advice on structural implementation of temporary supports for some buildings that were in more poor condition. So this was something really exciting of being able to combine my engineering knowledge with my coworkers' knowledge of years in the trades and kind of understanding empirically what works and what doesn't. You can see on the bottom left, sometimes we would put in some temporary support posts if buildings were in very poor condition or we were afraid that, a wall might collapse or there was something that was broken. And this is kind of outside of the scope of what Fixus normally does, but I think it's something that's really cool about the project is they have these craftspeople that are able to adapt in the field and be able to implement something when the building needs it. And then the last type of visit I got to do were workshops, which were really enjoyable. It's usually something that Fixus does with owners to teach them how to maintain their own buildings. So Fixus can only do the work that they're able to have, a couple days worth of work. So being able to educate the owners is something really impactful to the community of teaching these people how to maintain their own buildings. So I was able to participate in a workshop where we restored historic wood windows, which was really exciting for me to learn about. We also had the exciting opportunity to go to Liepāja, Latvia, to work with the Lipa Restoration Center because they're considering launching a project similar to Fixus in Latvia. So we kind of were invited to show off what we do and talk to people in the local community about what the scope of our work looks like. So it was really cool that was about halfway through my internship, so I was able to share what I do and my experience at Fixus, and it was a really rewarding experience. So along the way, as I said, we traveled all across Lithuania. Sometimes we would stay multiple nights on the job site in order to get the work done. So we got to explore a lot of small towns around Lithuania. So these are just some images that I took while on trips with my coworkers. So we got to stay in some very beautiful locations, in the forest, near lakes and rivers. I got to visit the beach in Latvia and also saw an outdoor sculpture museum near one of our job sites. So it was really exciting for me, even just being in the car and driving across the countryside and seeing how beautiful everything is and really getting a deep knowledge of the country. It's not really something I could have seen just as a tourist in Lithuania, so this was really a rewarding part of the experience. And then in my days off, I lived in Vilnius, which is the capital city of Lithuania and has one of the largest and most well-preserved old towns in Europe. So that was a really wonderful experience to see the unique architecture there, a lot of very historic buildings and great lookouts and open space. I really enjoyed the weather in the Baltic summer. It was not too hot, so that was great. It was happy to be outside even when I wasn't working. And then Vilnius also has a really nice new part of the town as well. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. I really enjoyed my time there. And then I got to experience a lot of the Lithuanian culture. On top of just their architecture, I really enjoyed the food. A lot of the groceries were very fresh and locally grown, so that was fun for me as someone who likes to cook and eat fresh food. I tried some of the local cuisine, such as the famous pink soup, which was really good to try. And I also got to attend the Summer Solstice Festival and see some traditional song and dance, as well as traditional clothing and customs. So it was really exciting for me to be able to experience that while I was there. And then in some of my days off, I got to travel to other places around Lithuania. So I got to go to Nida, which is on the coast of the Baltic Sea, and there's some very beautiful and unique sand dunes there. So that was really exciting to go there and hike and swim in the sea. I also got to go to Trakai, which has a very well-maintained island castle, which was beautiful, and Kaunas, which is another large city in Lithuania. So those were great to see. I also got to do a trip up to the other Baltic capitals, so in Latvia, Estonia, and then even up to Helsinki and Finland. So I had never been to any of these countries before, and it was really exciting for me to get to visit them during this time. So lastly, what did I gain? Many more things than I can fit on a slide, but just to summarize, definitely my confidence working on site went up. As an engineer, I had done site visits before with previous internships, but I'd never been the person performing the work or kind of getting in and taking samples. So I gained so much confidence in my ability to be competent in that way, and I think it'll really help inform my engineering work as I go forward, understanding those technical aspects of conservation. Also learning hands-on techniques with craftsmanship tools, that was really wonderful, and the craftsmen were very patient in teaching me how to use these tools and always finding something for me to do on site so I could feel like I was contributing and helping out. And I think those are great skills that I'll carry forward and continue with my work. Also, just understanding preservation attitudes and industries in Europe. We had so many great conversations, especially, spending hours in the car driving to site, talking about this is how we would attack this problem in Lithuania and how would you attack this in the United States and how is it different? So really wonderful exchange of knowledge there that was valuable for me. Of course, experiencing Lithuanian culture, being really immersed for 10 weeks, I really enjoyed it, and it was a super unique experience, and everybody was very welcoming and open to sharing their culture with me, which was great. And getting to travel in the Baltic area was completely new and really wonderful for me as well, as I showed some photos. And then lastly, the international network of IEP alumni, not only my cohort members this year, but also all of the other previous IEP alumni. It's been really wonderful to see that, and I'm excited to join the alumni cohort going forward. So just wanted to thank World Heritage USA, first of all, and especially our coordinator, Caitlin, did a really great job bringing us all together and helping us get to know each other and feel comfortable with the program. So thank you for that. Thank you so much to my coworkers at Fixus. It was really wonderful to spend the summer with you and be immersed in that world. So yeah, it was really a great experience, and I'm happy to share it with you all.